All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Maddie, and I will be your moderator for today's Acadia 101 session. So today we're going to be covering co-op and study abroad. Just going to run through a few housekeeping items, a quick campus update, upcoming events, then I'll hand it over to our experts, and then at the end we'll do a live Q&A. So just to begin again, my name is Maddie. That is me. That photo was obviously taken pre-pandemic. My hair is much longer now, but I'll be your moderator for today, and I'll be moderating the Q&A at the end. Michelle Larson is joining us from the co-op office, and Michael Holmes, our international admissions officer. So just a few things. Microsoft Live does have around a 20 to 30 second delay. So just keep that in mind if you're typing any questions into the chat box. And this video will be available, like all of our other Acadia 101 sessions, on our website within 48 hours. So if you're typing a question, the chat box should be on your right there. Please feel free to type them throughout the presentation, and we will be addressing those at the end during our live Q&A. All right, so we have one more upcoming webinar, Financial Preparedness. That is on July 22nd at 3 p.m. Atlantic time. So that will be a great one to check out. Make sure you register for that one, or join us for that one, sorry. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle Larson, our manager of co-op here at Acadia.
Great. Thanks so much, Maddie. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. As Maddie said, my name is Michelle Larson, and I'm the manager of cooperative education here at Acadia. It's great to be here with you today. Next slide, please. One of the really unique things about Acadia is that we have a co-op option with 85% of the degrees that we have at Acadia. So co-op is traditionally known to be offered with business degrees, but at Acadia, we actually have a co-op option for students taking any of the arts, any of the sciences, as well as community development. I often tell students that it's easier to tell you what we don't offer co-op with as compared to what we do, just because there are so many options. If you happen to be on this call today and you're in music, kinesiology, or engineering and you don't see your program listed here, don't worry, Acadia has tons of hands-on learning opportunities with those degrees. And with engineering, you'll eventually typically end up going to Dalhousie to finish your degree, where you'll do co-op there. Next slide, please. So you know that co-op is offered with your degree, but what is it? Co-op is an academic program that allows you to go and work with employers in your field of study as part of your degree, where you gain hands-on skills, learning all kinds of things within your discipline, taking what you've learned in class and applying it to real-life situations. As I mentioned, it's an academic program, so now when students complete the co-op option, they actually are able to accumulate the equivalent of 2 elective courses that go towards degree requirements, which is great. When you're on co-op working with employers, typically work terms are 4 months in length, but they can be 8, 12, or 16 months in length. And when you're out with an employer, you're actually working with them full time, so 35 hours or more per week. Most of our work terms are scheduled during the summers, but there'll also be a semester in 3rd or 4th year where instead of being in an in-class semester in the fall or winter, you'll actually be out on a co-op work term. And because you get elective credit that goes along with completing co-op, now with a little bit of planning, it's really easy to do co-op and still graduate on time, which is really important for a lot of students. One of the major differences between co-op at the high school level and co-op at the university level is that co-op at Acadia, those work terms are actually paid. Our students typically make between $15 to $16 per hour, which translates into about $10,000 per work term. And so it might not be surprising, although it really was surprising to me, that in 2019, collectively our co-op students earned $2.7 million in wages. That pays for a ton of tuition, and 50% of our students last year that did co-op actually graduated completely debt-free, which is amazing. The other thing that co-op obviously gives you is work experience. And because students complete a minimum of 3 4-month co-op work terms as part of their degree, you're actually graduating with a year's worth of work experience before you graduate in your field of study, which makes you really competitive in the job market and career ready once you graduate. Next slide, please. There's a lot of different reasons to do co-op. So what might be some of the reasons that you decide to opt into a co-op degree at Acadia? Well, one of the reasons is that one of the things that we train you on are job search skills. So we actually put you through professional development training where we work with you on developing resume and cover letter skills. We work with you on interview preparation and how to actually develop your own work term so that once you graduate, you have those skills for a lifetime. Some students come to Acadia knowing exactly what they want to do with their degree, but a lot of students come not really knowing what they want to do when they graduate. And co-op gives you a chance to really test drive different careers early enough that you can use those work terms to determine where you want to take your degree and where you want to take your career. And it's really great because oftentimes students will select a work term that they think they're going to love. And if you find out that you don't, you want to find that out really early so that you can pivot in your degree and pursue something that you're really passionate about. One of the other fantastic things about co-op is that as part of the program, you have access to exclusive opportunities that are only available to you as a co-op student. In 2019, we actually posted 3,300 different opportunities for students to choose from. And you know, whether it's federal government, provincial government, companies, not-for-profits, they're all coming to Acadia for co-op students because they love the fact that co-op is not just a job, but it's something that's part of your education. And so if you're not in the co-op program, you actually never see or get to apply to those opportunities. And so as you're gaining hands-on skills, you're also developing industry contacts, gaining valuable references that can really pave the way for your future. And one of the biggest things that comes out of co-op is that our students actually secure jobs before they graduate. Last year, our graduating class that came out of co-op, 90% of them that were going into the workforce versus continuing in their education has secured full-time jobs within 1 month of graduation, which is, again, just a fantastic thing to hear. Next slide, please. So most of you are coming into Acadia this year, and with co-op, you don't have to make any decisions about it right now. We actually just want you to come the first year, get used to your new normal, get settled, and then the normal time to apply for a co-op degree is at the beginning of second year. So as long as you're taking a minimum of 8 courses in the coming fall and winter term, which would equate to 24 credits completed, you would meet the eligibility requirements to apply for entry into the co-op program. If you're a transfer student, you may want to think about coming into co-op this year because you may have already between 24 and 75 credits completed. The other eligibility criteria that we look at is cumulative GPA. So at the time of application, you have to have a cumulative GPA of 2.5 or above. And if you meet those 2 requirements, so long as you submit your application by October the 1st, you are going to be eligible and be accepted into Acadia's co-op program. It's a fantastic program that allows you to really make the most of your education. And I wanted to mention the fact that one of the things that I love about Acadia is that you can make the experience your own. And what I mean by that is that I had a student who wanted to do co-op. She was a varsity athlete. She wanted to do honors, and she also wanted to go on exchange, which we're about to hear about. And we were actually able to make all those things happen for that student so that she had the most fulfilling experience possible. And so with that, we're going to learn a little bit more about Acadia's exchange program. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Holmes.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike. I'm the International Admissions Officer, and I also look after the exchange program at Acadia. That means that I look after students coming into Acadia on exchange and also our students who attend Acadia going abroad. And that's what I'm going to talk with you about today, is just Acadia students going abroad, and give you a bit of information about that. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is exchange? Most people understand that the exchange program involves going overseas or going to another university, but what makes exchange different than other study abroad? You can spend a semester or year abroad studying with one of our partner universities, but you pay Acadia tuition while you do that. And that allows you to avoid what would typically be much higher differential fees as an international student overseas. The credits that you earn when you're on exchange are transferred back to Acadia and they're applied towards your degree. And typically students go on exchange in the third year of their 4-year degree program. Just to tell you a little bit more about some of the other benefits of exchange that's not necessarily quite as obvious. In addition to simply being abroad, being in another country, you're actually living there. So you spend at least a semester, sometimes a year, and there's a lot more involved with that, a lot more benefit to be had in that than simply when you travel typically. The exchange program allows students to develop global awareness and a much greater intercultural understanding because you're actually living in a different society and in a different culture. Certainly it can enhance your academic learning. You may have the opportunity to learn similar courses as you would take at Acadia, but from a different perspective, or you may take courses that are totally different than what would be available here at home. You'd also develop significant leadership and self-reliance. This is something that requires a fair bit of independence. It's something that students do largely on their own, certainly with our help, but this is typically something that students would do either by themselves or maybe with one other student. It also allows you to create career opportunities through networking. You can experience significant personal growth, and of course, depending on where you go, it can help you learn another language. Next slide, please. So where can you go? We have exchange partners in 13 different countries, from Australia throughout Europe, in France and Germany, and the UK and Spain. We have one partner in Brazil, China, a couple new partners in Japan, Norway, Sweden, and we have 14 partners in the United States, in the New England area, and one in Indiana. So there's a fair bit of choice there. Certainly, it's a slightly competitive process, but we're usually able to place students. We always ask students to select at least 3 choices, and we can usually place students in at least one of their 3 choices. And I'll just point out the picture that you see here. This is a couple of guys that went on exchange in Australia a few years ago, and they said that it is essential that you take part in living in a van while you're in Australia. I didn't know that until they went, but there's a photo of them doing just that. So a lot of things that you can experience while you're on exchange that may not be readily apparent. Next slide, please. So how do you apply for the program? So students, as mentioned, would typically apply to go abroad in their 3rd year. So you would do that in your 2nd year. You apply at that time, the selection process takes place, and then you go abroad in your 3rd year. That's normally how it happens, although there are exceptions to that. You would submit an exchange application to our office and a reference letter as well from a professor. You have to have at least a GPA of 3.0, that's about a B average, in order to be considered. And most important, you have to meet with your academic advisor to ensure that exchange will fit within your study plan. So depending on what credits you have already completed and those that are still outstanding, that will in part determine whether or not exchange will fit within your plan. But the departments tend to be very supportive of students going abroad on exchange. They recognize the benefit to be had. So it's not very often that I've spoken with students who couldn't make it work somehow. Next slide, please. So finally, what are some of the things that students say about exchange? Time and again, I hear it was the best thing I've ever done. Students are very enthusiastic about this when they come back. They often say, I wish I could have stayed longer. I wish instead of a semester, I could have stayed for a whole year. I wish I could go back on exchange once again. And they always talk about the new friends that they've made. Obviously, when you're at Acadia, you're going to meet students from your area, from across Canada, and from elsewhere in the world. But when you go on exchange, you're embarking on something that's a bit different. This is a brand new experience for you. And you're going to find other students who are going through exactly the same thing that you are. So you have that commonality, and that bond right there often forges new friendships with international students from other countries, And very often students continue to meet up someplace either here in Canada or once again go abroad after their exchange program just to continue on with their friendship. Okay, so that's just a brief bit about exchange. I look forward to any questions that you might have about this. And Maddie, I'll pass this back on to you.
All right, thanks to Michelle and Mike. So now we're going to go to the live Q&A session. I also just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention it earlier, but you should, if you're a new student, you should have received communication today via email, whatever email you have attached to your application, regarding our new course delivery options. So if you have any questions about that, we recommend that you reach out directly to your department or to the Acadia For You email address, which I will post at the in a further slide. So our first question is for Michelle. If I have to take Acadia classes online while at home in the US this year, is there a way to be a part of the co-op program? I will be coming in as a sophomore, for any Canadians, that means second year, and would like to do a co-op job in summer 2021.
Okay, so yes, so again, as long as a student has at least 24 credits completed or 8 courses, they are eligible to apply to the program. So for students who would be applying this September, those students would be the ones that would be completing work terms in summer 2021. So you're typically applying at the beginning of second year, and the first work term would be completed in the summer after second year. So it's completely possible.
Okay, thank you. Next question is also for you, Michelle. What is the most unique co-op opportunity you have seen a student participate in? And I know there's probably lots, so maybe a more recent one over the past few years.
You know, I'm actually going to go back in time because you just can't really forget this. I was sitting at my desk and I received a photo from one of my co-op students, and it wasn't the photo on the first slide, but the student was standing in a survival suit next to a helicopter, and I didn't know quite what to make of it. So what was actually happening was that the student was working for the Canadian Wildlife Service, and they were actually being taken by helicopter to an island in the middle of the Bay of Fundy, which is between, or sorry, it's not the Bay of Fundy, it's further out because it borders Canada and the US. And basically they were going to plop him down on that island to live with a master's student there for the summer doing research on birds. And so literally dropping him off with food and saying, we'll see you in a month. And this had been news to me when I got that photo. It's a photo that I keep around. He had some reservations about going to this island in the middle of the ocean, but it turned out to be the absolute best experience of his life and completely changed the path of his career and where he ended up going. And so I will never forget that one.
Very, very cool. It sounds kind of scary to me. I'm not much of an island camper.
Yeah, not your typical co-op work term, by the way.
Yeah, very cool though, very cool. All right, Michelle, again, is the co-op application process difficult?
It is not difficult at all. It's literally paperwork questions that you could answer with your eyes closed. We do request a current resume. It's not a resume that we want you to work on. We want to see where your resume skills are when you come into the program. And we want a letter of application just indicating your interest, why you're interested in the co-op program, why you think you would be a great co-op ambassador. And so it really shouldn't take any more than an hour or two to submit.
Beautiful. All right, and Michelle, as the deadline is October 1st each year, does this mean that the application has to be submitted before the second year starts?
Before the second year starts. So, so again, I'll maybe just come back to to the eligibility, and that students have to have at least 24 credits completed at the time of application. Applications, by the way, are going to be opening probably next Friday, so there's quite a long duration where students can apply. But one thing that I'll mention on top of that is that if you are a second-year student and maybe you meet the eligibility criteria in terms of where you are in your degree and how many credits you have completed, but you don't meet the GPA criteria at the beginning of second year, you still have the ability to apply at the beginning of third year, so long as you don't have over 75 credits completed. So you usually have a couple of years where you are eligible to make that application. I hope that answers the question.
All right, and this is a question for both Mike and Michelle. How can you fit in exchange program and co-op in the 4-year degree program? And maybe if you two have an example of a student, maybe Michelle, that varsity athlete, their timeline of what it looked like for them.
So I think, Mike, I'll take this if you don't mind, and certainly feel free to chip in. Every student that comes to Acadia is unique, and that's one of the beautiful parts about Acadia, is that you're going to be treated individually as a unique person. So answering that question is really difficult, because what we would need to do is sit down with you as an individual and look at your particular schedule. It would depend on what degree that you're doing and so on. But what I can tell you is that we would try to move mountains to make that all work. And I haven't actually run across a situation where we haven't been able to make something like that all fit in. It can be challenging for sure, but it's definitely possible.
And I would just like to add to that as well, if I can. Michelle, you're absolutely right. It's very much an individual thing. And that's what I was going to say. When I've had students come to me before, they wanted to do co-op and exchange. In some cases, they made the decision themselves to do one or the other. But in other cases, we've had students who we were able to make exceptions. And as I said, students typically go on exchange in their third year. Sometimes it doesn't work out very well because of co-op. There have been exceptions made for students to go in their fourth year just for a semester or whatnot. We will do what we can to try and work around their specific circumstances to enable them to have that experience. There's quite a benefit to be had in going abroad. I mean, it's a learning experience unlike any other, really. So it's we want students to be able to partake in co-op and enjoy the benefit of that, and also exchange if possible. The same thing goes for varsity athletics. We have varsity athletes, and because of the training involved in that, their schedule during their season, and then the practice and training thereafter or beforehand, whichever it might be, it's often very difficult to fit exchange into that. And we've made exceptions again where students have basically completed their varsity athletics career, and then they've had the opportunity to go on exchange afterward. It's the exception as opposed to the norm, but we'll always see what we can do to enable that for students.
All right, thank you. Next question, how competitive is the co-op program?
So coming into the co-op program is not truly competitive at all, because if you meet the eligibility requirements, we're going to welcome you with open arms into the co-op program. We think it's great, and we want as many students as possible who are interested in the option to be able to pursue that. In terms of competition once you're in the program, so how co-op works is that the co-op office is going out and developing opportunities with employers for students. Sometimes employers just reach out to us because they know our reputation and they want to partner with us. Once we have those co-op opportunities, and once you're in the program, you gain access to something called the co-op student portal, where when you log in as a co-op student, you will see all the roles that are relevant to your degree, and you get to see all the details. So who is the employer? What is the job title? How much does that position pay? What are the start and end dates? What is the location? And then all the responsibilities and qualifications that go with that. It is always the student who decides what positions they want to be considered for. We don't match you with employers. It does become a competitive process where you're applying to positions, submitting a resume, cover letter, going through the interview process. And so when you're in the program, you're competing with your fellow classmates for roles, and oftentimes you're actually competing with other schools as well if an employer has chosen to recruit from various schools. It depends on the discipline how competitive it is, but even as challenging as this past summer has been with the pandemic, we are up to a 92% placement rate, and typically our placement rate is more around the 96, 98%. So it is very competitive, but you're supported in such a way where that if you're actively applying and engaging and looking at different positions, most students are successful.
All right, the next two I have here are for Mike. So the first, can an international student apply for the exchange program?
Yes, absolutely. We have international students apply every year. The process for Acadia is the same. So when you apply to the Acadia exchange program to go abroad elsewhere, it doesn't matter if you're Canadian or international, the process is exactly the same. The only difference might be in visa requirements or anything like that, depending on the country that you're from, in order to travel to the partner institution. But as far as the exchange program application process at Acadia, it doesn't matter. Certainly international students can and do go abroad every year.
Okay, and the next one, can you do more than one exchange, or can you extend your time past the 1 year?
The exchange program can be competitive as well, simply because there's limited spaces for Acadia students with each partner, and each partner also has partnerships with other universities. So we do what we can to place every student that applies and is eligible with one of their selections. It's not possible to do more than one up to a year of exchange. So if you apply and do a semester and then you wish to extend that, sometimes we can do that. That would involve the registrar's office at Acadia and your academic department at Acadia, allowing you to take additional courses that were not previously approved, but that has happened before. If you've applied to go for a year and wish to go longer than that, that wouldn't be possible, because then you would be potentially taking a spot from another student at Acadia the following year. So we do what we can to place you for a semester or a year. We have had a student, one or two in the past, who were going abroad for a semester extend their time up to a year. That doesn't happen very often though, but beyond a year would not be possible.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, since school does not start until September 21st this year, should we apply this summer in order to get all the paperwork done to apply for co-op?
If you are basically at the point where you are quote unquote a second year student, so if you have between 24 credits and say 42 credits already completed as you're coming into co-op, I would recommend applying as soon as applications open, just because this year we're doing something a little bit differently, where we're going to be processing applications as we receive them and helping students through professional development activities in August and September. So it allows you to make really good use of your time before classes start. But if you don't have 24 credits completed as of yet, if you applied right now, we wouldn't accept your application. We would get back to you and just say, unfortunately, you're not eligible this year, but please apply again next September.
Okay, and another one for Mike here. Can engineering students apply for the exchange program?
The only issue with engineering students applying, we have 2 engineering programs. We have the Certificate of Applied Science, which is a 2-year program. So once you complete that program, as I said, you would be applying to go abroad typically in your 2nd year, to go abroad in your 3rd year. And there is no 3rd year if you're a Certificate of Applied Science student. There's no 3rd year at Acadia. So you wouldn't be able to do that as a CAS student. The Bachelor of Applied Science program is a 3-year program. And the issue that we would have in that case would be in your final year of engineering at Acadia, you would be looking to go on exchange. I wouldn't say that it's not possible to do that. You would just need permission from the department, from the School of Engineering, and from the Registrar's Office to allow you to do that. Very often, no matter which program you're in, usually the university would prefer that you complete your final studies, your final year of studies, or certainly your final semester at Acadia. And there's a limit as to how many transfer credits you can bring in and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit more challenging for students to apply to go abroad on exchange in their final year of their program. I have not seen a student in the engineering program apply to go on exchange during their final year, but if they had the permission of the department and of the Registrar's Office, then there's no reason that you wouldn't be able to do it.
Thank you. And back to Michelle. What is the average per hour payment for science students in their co-op programs, and specifically computer science?
Great question. So typically the average wage for really most co-op students tends to be between $15 and $16 per hour, but certainly with computer science students, depending on who you're working for, whether it's federal government or some of the bigger firms, I certainly see wages that do crawl up more towards the $18 to $20 per hour mark.
All right, thank you. And again, back to Mike. Danielle provided a link there for anybody to check out our partner institutions. But Mike, could you please speak to some of the universities that we have partnerships with, maybe some particularly popular ones?
Sure. Well, one of the more popular destinations, one of the more popular partner countries is Australia. We have 3 partners in Australia: Curtin University, Southern Queensland University, and University of Newcastle. All very reputable universities, great academics there. But just between us, I believe that students like to go to Australia because it's Australia. So having said that, that's certainly one of the more popular destinations. Our partners that we have in France and in Germany and the UK, those overwhelmingly are the 3 top spots for students. Each university in those, we have 2 partners in France, we have 4 in Germany, and 5 in the UK. They're all a little bit different. They all, for Acadia students, they all focus on slightly different disciplines, perhaps. But more than that, they all have their own characteristics and their own flavor. So those tend to be the most popular. They're the most, I would say, traditional locations, if you will. And I would compare that to something like Japan. So we have fairly new partnerships in Japan. One of them, it's ICLA, which is part of Yamanashi Gakuin University in Japan. They actually have an international school on their campus that is very similar to Acadia, and this is why our partnership with them is so fantastic. We have students coming and going from that institution. We have another partnership with Doshisha University, and we've only had 1 student who has yet to go there, but he's planning to go there this during our winter semester this coming year. So those are fairly new partnerships that we're really interested in. Those are a little bit more exotic locations. They're not your traditional. I think students often find that going to European institutions, it's not quite so far outside their comfort zone. We have another institution in Hong Kong, and the more recent unrest notwithstanding in Hong Kong, that certainly it's an amazing exchange opportunity there as well. So there's some that are quite traditional and that we see a lot of interest in all the time. And then now there's students that are looking for something a little bit different when they go on exchange, the type of experience that is not like they have here at all. And that's what they're looking for, perhaps in Japan or Hong Kong. So yeah, there's something different there for everybody for sure.
Wonderful. And yeah, I do encourage everyone interested in study abroad to check out the link that Danielle posted to that question. There's a list of all our partner institutions, and you can research them if you'd like to. All right, for Michelle. So if we have to take online classes from home this fall and/or winter, are you willing to do the job search skills, resume skills, cover letter skills, etc.? Are you willing to do those online for the co-op program for any students involved?
Absolutely. And actually, I think whether you're taking courses completely online or even if you're coming back to campus this year, largely the professional development that we will be doing with students will be virtual, and we've worked out how that's going to happen, and are really happy with the innovations and the offerings that we're going to be able to do virtually. So don't let that be a concern. We're ready to help you.
Thank you. And another one from Mike. So this is a community development student, and they're wondering if you can clarify that all programs can take advantage of study abroad or exchange.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as we did talk about the challenges involved with the engineering program, but certainly community development students, we have community development students going abroad every year as well. The other thing I should point out as well is when you look at the partner institutions, and thank you to Danielle for posting the link to the various partners that are there, when you look at that on the website, you can see that certain institutions offer specific disciplines for Acadia students. So Loughborough University in England, for example, that is specifically designed for students in the English program. That doesn't mean, though, that you have to be a student in the English program here at Acadia. As long as you can take electives in the areas that are available at the partner institutions, and those will fit within your study plan. I mean, technically, you could be a business student if you have room for electives in English and in other areas. Then you can go someplace where at a university where they're not offering business courses. And as long as you have elective hours to be filled, you can do that. So you don't necessarily have to go to one of the partner institutions that offers your specific discipline. It just really depends upon, and again, this is why it's important that you sit down with your academic advisor. It depends upon the coursework that you've completed and what you have left to complete, and the specific areas that you have courses left in which to take. And that will help determine where you can go and what courses you can take while abroad. But definitely, it's open to every program.
All right, another one for you, Mike. Is it possible to guarantee an exchange with a friend?
I wouldn't say guarantee, but if I know, often what we have is we have friends come into the office to talk about it. You know, they're going through this together, they're putting the application in together, and what we typically do is one of two things. Because again, it is a competitive process, primarily in terms of where you're going to be placed. So what I always say to students is, you guys sit down together, figure out your top 3 choices in order, and I will try to, depending on how everything is ranked, I will do everything that I can to place you at the same institution. And one of the issues we might run into, of course, is that the partner institution in which they're interested may only offer a very small number of places. And if there's a lot of competition for that, we may have to look at their second choice or something like that. We've had students come in and say, listen, these are our top 3 choices, but if there's something else, we can't go to any of those and there's something else available, let us know and we'll consider it. And absolutely we'll do that. I think it's such an experience to go on exchange just if you go by yourself. I'm sure it's twice the fun if you go with somebody else, with a friend. So yeah, definitely we'll do what we can to make that happen.
All right, if I do an exchange, does it have to be one of Acadia's partnered schools, or could I go somewhere else?
That's a good question, and that's a question that I get asked frequently. So if you go to another university, you're basically getting the permission of the registrar's office to take courses there and transfer them back to Acadia. If you're going to go and do that on exchange, that means you pay Acadia tuition, and you do have to go to one of the partner institutions that we have listed. If you are not going to one of those institutions, you can pick any university on the planet that you want to go to. you'll have to get the permission of the registrar's office to let you go there, and you'll have to show them the courses that you want to take, and those courses would have to be approved. If they're good with that, you definitely can go and spend a semester or whatnot at this other institution, but that would not be exchange. That would simply be you going as an independent student to that other university and then transferring your credits back to Acadia. And the other thing about that, of course, is that while you're doing that, you would pay tuition to the other institution. So potentially a much higher tuition fee than what you would be paying at Acadia. So to go on exchange, you do have to apply to the exchange program and go to one of those partner institutions.
All right, thank you. We have another one for Michelle here. So highest working time for a co-op student, I just believe, hourly hours per week that a co-op student would work.
Sure. So typically the maximum number of hours that we see is 40. Co-op work terms have to, they follow labor laws the same as any other employment. And so I might have recalled maybe with an accounting firm, maybe going up to potentially 42 hours per week during tax time. But typically you're going to see somewhere between 35 to 40, and almost always it's your sort of typical 8:30 to 4:30 type role. Of course, now with the pandemic, one of the things that we did see over the summer was that many of our co-op work terms switched to a work from home situation. It really depended on the employer and what protocols that they had in place. And that may be something that we see more of over time as employers switch to a new type of work environment.
Thank you. All right, I think Mike mostly covered this next question, but if you want to weigh in again, Mike, is it difficult for an international psychology student to apply for the exchange program?
Sure. Yeah, as I said before, whether you're Canadian or international, when you apply to the Acadia exchange program for consideration to go abroad as part of the program, it doesn't matter, international, Canadian, that doesn't have any impact. We're going to look at your application. You'll be compared with everybody else. The only issues that some international students might have, and it's typically not an issue, it's just that the process may be different. You would have to look at visa requirements or study permit issues, that type of thing, in order for you to travel to and study at a university in another country. So we have Canadian and international students at Acadia applying to the exchange program. We just look at everybody. We look at the application, we look at the reference letter and the GPA, and try to place everybody that we can. The other issue for international students would be that they would be working with their own government and their own permit requirements and that sort of thing when they're actually applying for visas to go abroad. That's really the biggest difference right there.
Thank you. All right, and for Michelle, what opportunities are available for environmental studies students in co-op? And I'm not sure if this is environmental sciences, or environmental geoscience, geology, or if they mean environmental sustainability studies, one of our arts programs. So maybe you can speak to a few different examples if you have them.
Sure. So our environmental studies program, co-op program is fairly new, but I would say that if you are somebody who is headed into an environmental field, whether that's in the sciences or in the environmental studies side, you've likely made a very good career choice because there are so many opportunities for these students. We actually often have unfilled roles that we just don't have enough students to fill. So if you're interested in co-op, that's fantastic. So the types of opportunities are really wide ranging. And I think that is one of the reasons that I love co-op so much, is that when students come into the program, co-op is a reflection of the job market. So you truly get to see what some of the different paths are that you can take with your degree. So with environment, you get very hands-on scientific roles where there's a lot of overlap with biology. So you might be out doing conservation work, looking at wildlife. But we also have roles that fall more on the policy side. So perhaps working with Environment Canada, doing research and developing the policies that will be put in place to govern environmental regulations, whether that be federally, provincially, or municipally. Then we have roles that are more on the education side, where you're going out into the community and teaching people about environmental sustainability. So there's such a vast array. It actually is mind-blowing to see all of it. So I'd be very open if there's students that are interested in the co-op program. If you wanted to reach out to me and have me provide you a sort of a sample list of, job descriptions and opportunities that are available for specific disciplines, I'm happy to do that.
All right, question for Mike. Are co-op opportunities, or sorry, not Mike, Michelle, I was thinking exchange. Are co-op opportunities within British Columbia few and far between?
Good question. So the truth of the matter is there are co-op opportunities out there. It is quite difficult for Acadia students to secure them. And part of the reason is that in British Columbia, you have UBC and U of Vic that have huge co-op schools. And obviously they're in British Columbia, they've got great reputations. And oftentimes what happens is that employers will go to the schools within their region first. So as an example, 90% of work terms for Acadia students tend to be in Nova Scotia, but we do have work terms that are coast to coast, and we do work terms that are abroad as well, although they're more the rarity. So when I have a student who comes into the co-op program from British Columbia, we sit down and have individualized discussions about what it is that you're looking for, where you want to be. And if you want to be in British Columbia, it's a possibility, but we really set expectations that we have to work together as a team to identify and go after those opportunities, because it's probably going to take a little bit more work to make that happen. And so if the student is willing to be part of that, and then we get them involved in it, teaching them oftentimes how to go and advocate on their own for those opportunities, because sometimes you can actually be much more successful as a student approaching an employer than even our office approaching an employer. So definitely a possibility, difficult, but if you're up for it, we are too.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, so that was our last question in the chat box there. So we are going to wrap things up. If you need to view this webinar again, there will be a recording of it within 48 hours on our future students page. You can go check that out. General questions can definitely be emailed to our Acadia For You account. The email is up there. If you have specific questions about co-op, please feel free to reach out to Michelle and the co-op office. Questions about exchange or study abroad, you can definitely reach out to Mike Holmes. For any new students, incoming first years, there is a Facebook group if you want to join it, just to kind of get familiar with any other incoming students, your residence you might be staying in, etc. And you can search Acadia University Class of 2024 on Facebook. And I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us today. Please feel free to ask us any questions. We're here to help. We know it's a strange year for sure, but we want you to know that we will help you with any co-op, study abroad, any of those questions you have, as well as everything else. So please don't be afraid to reach out. I want to thank Michelle and Mike for joining us today. Your expertise are greatly appreciated. And thank you everybody for joining us.